So, picture this. It's New Year's Day, 1981. Reverend Sun Myung Moon gets up and delivers a sermon that is going to set the course for his followers for the entire decade. And it's all built around one single, really powerful idea that puts all the responsibility right on the individual. We're going to break down the logic of this sermon to really understand the thinking behind one of the Unification Church's most central doctrines.
And this right here was the motto for 1981. Home church is my kingdom of heaven. It's such a bold personal statement. But what does that even mean? To say that your block, your neighborhood, is the kingdom of heaven? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to put together today using the sermon's own logic.
All right, so to unpack all that, we're going to start with how this motto came to be and the spiritual war it's supposed to address. Then we'll dive into the historical backstory, the specific how-to that was laid out, what was at stake for the followers, and finally, the incredible cosmic rewards that were promised for getting it right.
Now, this wasn't the first time that heard the term home church. This was actually the third motto in a series. The first couple of mottos, they really focused on the idea as, a collective thing, a base for the kingdom of heaven. But the 1981 version, it added one tiny but absolutely crucial word, my. And that one little word changed everything. It took the mission from a group project to your own personal responsibility.
So why the sudden urgency? Why this personal mission right now? Well, the sermon lays out this core theological problem. The idea is that, yes, spiritual victories had been won, but the entire physical world, we're talking your body, your house, your street, was still considered to be totally under Satan's control.
And the sermon makes this really fascinating distinction. It basically splits heaven in two. It argues that a mind heaven, a spiritual space inside you that's free from Satan's influence, that part was already won. The new fight, the new battleground, was for the physical heaven. The mission was now to free your actual body from Satan's claim.
But it doesn't stop there. Not even close. According to the text, the ultimate frontier was to push Satan's influence out of your immediate surroundings, your environment. The whole idea was to carve out a physical zone, a real place on earth where Satan just had no footing, making a literal heaven on earth a real possibility.
Okay, so to really get why this was suddenly their job, the sermon basically retells religious history. It paints this picture where past missions were left unfinished, which perfectly sets the stage for this new, final mission that falls on their shoulders.
And the engine that drives this whole historical argument is this concept of indemnity. This is a super important theological term here. Basically, it means making a repayment or meeting some kind of condition to undo the failures of the past. Think of it like paying off a spiritual debt.
So this idea of indemnity is what really powers the whole historical timeline in the sermon. The argument goes like this. Jesus was supposed to build a physical kingdom but couldn't, so Reverend Moon had to first win back that mission in the spirit world. Then, these huge rallies in America in 1976, they established the physical victory needed, and that brings us to 1981, where the sermon says that whole victorious foundation is now ready to be handed over, transferred directly to the followers. Which brings us to the how. Okay, so if this massive historical victory is now up for grabs, what's the actual method for claiming it? The sermon's answer is clear: home church. And it's not just some vague idea. It's presented as a concrete, step-by-step plan.
And right at the heart of this whole plan is a number, 360. Not 365 like the days in a year, specifically 360. So why?
Because the logic in the sermon is that a 360-home area is like a miniature version of the entire planet. The text explains that within a typical American neighborhood of that size, you could find people representing all the world's races and nations. So if you could win over that little area, it was like winning over the whole world on a personal scale. It was your microcosm.
And this just underscores how incredibly important this whole doctrine was. Home church wasn't just a nice activity. It was framed as the only way to push Satan out, to build a physical foundation, to finish the job Jesus started, and at the end of the day, it was presented as the single, non-negotiable path to salvation.
So if this is the only path, you've got to ask, what's it going to take? What does this demand from a person? The sermon is very, very clear that the stakes are incredibly high, and it requires nothing less than absolute commitment.
I mean, there is zero wiggle room here. This quote from the text is as absolute as it gets. It positions home church not as a good idea or a helpful suggestion, but but as the mandatory required ticket for getting into the kingdom of heaven, period.
And that leads to this huge question that's actually posed in this sermon itself. If you're going to inherit this incredible thing, this physical kingdom of heaven, what is the absolute rock-bottom minimum condition you have to be willing to meet?
And the answer, it's intense. The sermon explains that the minimum condition is the willingness to die for the mission. It even uses the story of Abraham and Isaac to make the point that no, actual death isn't the requirement, but that internal resolve, being willing to go all the way, that's the baseline.
Now, to make this enormous task feel a little more doable, the sermon offers this really great analogy. It says the leader's work was like writing a massive encyclopedia, explaining every single detail. The follower's work, on the other hand, is like compiling a small dictionary. It's a much smaller version of the same thing with just the basic, essential words, but it's still a project they have to complete all on their own.
All right, so if a follower does all this, if they meet these intense conditions and they actually succeed in building their home church, what's the payoff? Well, the sermon promises rewards that go way beyond just one person. They stretch back into the spirit world and forward across generations.
And one of the most powerful metaphors used to explain this is the rocket analogy. Think about it like this. Each of your 360 homes is a fuel tank. Your job is to connect all the fuel lines between them through your hard work. And when you finally ignite that fuel, the combined power is enough to launch you, spiritually, straight to heaven. It's such a vivid picture of how collective energy fuels your own personal salvation.
And the blessings that were promised, they were just immense. Success wasn't just about you. It was said that you would literally liberate your ancestors, that you'd pave a better path for your children and grandchildren, and that you would connect your entire family, your entire nation to the heaven that you built. It was the key to making a spiritual idea a physical, multi-generational reality.
So, we'll end with this thought. The core idea of the sermon is that heaven isn't some far-off place. It's a tangible reality that you build right here, right now, house by house. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative question that really gets to the heart of the whole doctrine. If your kingdom of heaven is built right where you stand, what happens when your neighbor starts building theirs right next door?